Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card breakdown. This time for UFC St. Louis, we have 13 fights, concluding with a heavyweight showdown between Derek Lewis and Rodrigo Nascimento. One that's, pretty important for me this week. I will be there live, so give me a shout if you're going there as well. It should be a fun and actually an entertaining card, which is what I'm looking forward to, especially with a interesting main event, to say the least. But I still think there are some good spots to go out there and look to target, whether it be from a betting perspective, whether it be from a drafting perspective. We're going to cover it all. So be sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. You can also check out my best bets video sponsored by Coolbet out later in the week, as well as my DraftKings analysis on established run over there with Brett Appley. Check those out. We had a very good UFC 301 over there, so shout out to everybody who is tuning into Brett and I on the podcast on Thursdays. So hopefully they're able to go out there and make some green and continue this solid run we have going onto this weekend. Very fun card. Let's not waste any more time. Let's do this. We have the fight night started with the 13-6 JJ Aldrich taking on the 8-4-1 Veronica Hardy in a decent opener here. It is a very competitive matchup, one that is expected to go to the distance a lot of the time, so maybe not have that same DraftKings value as other ones here, but still a very interesting one and tough one to break down. This fight is close to evens, and I tend to agree that it is a very, very close fight. Veronica Hardy has made those improvements. She took a few years off, came back as a big underdog, and it showed she made those improvements. A lot of volume, very good technicality in the feet, a very good ability to scramble from bottom position as well, but someone who I still think has a ways to go before being seen as a solid contender at this weight class. Don't like her striking defense, cardio still in question. Someone who, although has been making improvements, I still think there are more to make. JJ Aldrich to me is just one of these well-rounded fighters who is not really going to compete for a title anytime soon, but will be able to crush some cans. Solid wrestling, solid volume on the feet, very good technicality, and a durable fighter who's able to push forward and bring you a consistent product every time. In a matchup like this, although a close fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hardy went out there, out-volumed Aldrich to a close decision, I'm going to pick the dog here. And JJ Aldrich, I do think she is someone who I've seen push a solid pace for 15 minutes, someone who will have volume, someone who will have a reach advantage, and I just think is the more well-versed fighter. I think that Hardy's very good offensively, but I don't like her defensive skill set, don't like her cardio, whereas Aldrich is pretty well-rounded. She can push forward, she can mix in takedowns if she needs to, she will throw together some good boxing combinations, and although she doesn't have that same volume, she will be consistent throughout all three rounds, where I've seen Hardy kind of fall off as the fight goes on. However, with how close JJ Aldrich fights, I don't know if I'm going to get there on a bet this week. I do think it's one where I think the advantages are there for Aldrich, and I'm picking her to win. I just don't know if I'll get to the betting window yet. Make sure to check me out on Twitter on Friday to see if I end up doing so. DraftKings-wise, as I mentioned, expect to go all 15 minutes, so not my favorite fight to target on the card. They are this mid-range 8.2 and 8K, but Hardy in her last two wins scored 91 and 58 points. She has never eclipsed 100 points, not a historically good DraftKings scorer, whereas Aldrich is kind of in that similar boat. Last time she went out there, she did eclipse 100 points against Liang Na, but that's Liang Na. Last bout, 56 points in a decision against De La Rosa. Truthfully, these fighters do not score well on DraftKings, and they're at the very bottom of my player pool this week. I do think there are better fights to target, although I am picking the underdog. Next up, we have the 23-9 Jared Gooden versus the 10-2 Kevin Jousset in a fun battle here. I think it's going to be one that's going to be pretty tightly contested as well. We do have the favorite here in Kevin Jousset, who's on a bit of a roll, 10-2, 2 wins at the UFC, good volume, good range, good technicality, and I do think he is going to be the better output striker of the two in this matchup. We've all seen him have the ability to go out there and mix in takedowns, but truthfully, his bread and butter is that striking on the feet, good volume, good technicality, good ability to keep and apply good pressure throughout the fight, and he was able to go out there and land a ton of strikes against Kenan Song. Landed 158 strikes in that matchup, and one that did go to decision. He's shown good cardio, good ability to absorb damage, and just an overall good striker. Jared Gooden's a fun guy to cheer for. He has a lot of power in his hands. He's exciting because often when he's winning fights, he's getting these finishes, but he's kind of limited to that. Not the same volume, not the same wrestling. He can be taken down, he can be hit as well, but he has that power. He is not the best minute winner, but he is ever dangerous to go out there and finish the fight. Because of that, and because of the way that Jousset is kind of limited to his striking, and he's going to be forced to engage with a guy in Jared Gooden, Gooden is live to go out there and get that knockout. But I cannot go out here and quantify picking Jared Gooden in the spot because I can't see him winning minutes. I don't see him as the better volume striker here against Kevin Jousset. And when it comes down to technicality and landing the damage, it is going to be the Jousset side of things. So whereas I do not agree with a minus 225 price tag, and necessarily I do think Jousset's going to win. He's my pick to get it done, and I do think he has more tools to go out there and out-volume Gooden to a minute winning decision. In doing so, though, do I want Kevin Jousset 9.2K on DraftKings? Not necessarily. I mean, he's put up good scores, averaging 103 across his two wins so far, but truthfully, Gooden has shown to be historically durable, able to withstand some damage. I do think without much grappling upside, with questionable finish upside, he is someone who is not necessarily the best DraftKings option, whereas you have other people in this range. We're going to talk about some high volatility matchups when you have Terrence Mckinney in the card, Despaigne on the card, Rebecki in the card. There are people you want to target, and I just think that kind of overshadows someone in Jousset in the spot. I think he's better as a secondary option. I wouldn't force him in my lineups, but if you're looking to get different, that's a way to do so. Jared Gooden, the other side of things, 2 wins inside the UFC, scored 99 and 111. He has power. When he wins fights, he's finishing them. And I think that although I don't see him winning that often, when he does at 7K, he is very live to make the optimal lineup. A punt play, kind of a GPP Hail Mary, because I don't see him winning that often, but when he does, should score well. I will sprinkle him in due to that KO upside, but truthfully, I'm picking Jousset in this match. Next up, 10-2 Jake Hadley versus the 14-6 Charles Johnson. Hometown Charles Johnson in this matchup, and this one's a pretty polarizing one for me. It's gonna be my first stance here. You know what, being in St. Louis, being an hometown guy, I'll probably end up, cheering for Charles Johnson. He doesn't have my favorite style in the world, and I've been critical of him in the past, but he wants to go out there and perform. He is someone who is very active, which I like that from him, and he is someone who I wish him well in his endeavors. But truthfully, in this matchup, I think we're getting kind of a buy low spot here on Jake Hadley. Hadley has not had the best run in the UFC. Lost to Durden, saw him live in Nashville, was able to go out there and was able to get out grappled by Nascimento in his debut, but someone who I do think has a good fundamental skill set. To me, what it comes down to is I just think the discrepancy in the grappling is larger than the discrepancy in the striking. On the feet, although Charles Johnson can have more volume, he's going to be applying the pressure on the feet. Someone who has been historically durable, I think that Hadley can compete in the striking. His boxing in his own right is very, very crisp. He can complete there, whereas Charles Johnson can be taken down by a gust of wind, and I do think Jake Hadley can exploit that. Hadley, I think, is the much better scrambler in these spots. It's someone who can go out there, push a pace, and if Charles Johnson scrambles up like he always does, I do think Hadley may have the edge on the striking optics. The reason why I'm hesitant to go out there and make a big play on Hadley is due to that home crowd advantage, more pop from the crowd when Johnson lands, and what I do think is a close fight. But the guy with more avenues, in my opinion, a guy who I just think is maybe a tier above here, is the younger fighter in Hadley, who is hungry here, and I am picking him to win in this matchup. There's a reason why Charles Johnson has historically been an underdog in the UFC. I mean, big underdog against Maxim in a upset last time, but because people can take him down, people can control him, he can lose minutes that way, and even at that, we saw him lose optics on the feet to Maxim there too. I think Hadley is a good prospect who's continuing to improve, and I will be picking him in this matchup. DraftKings-wise, I think Johnson will be popular just because I think people are seeing him winning this fight more often than the line entails, but truthfully, he's limited to that striking, and in his 2 striking-based decisions, scored 72 and 82. I don't think he's the best DraftKings play in general because he doesn't offer much grappling upside, he doesn't offer much finish upside, and therefore I think there are better options on the slate. But if he ends up winning, any underdog winning is good. I more so kind of want to be invested in Hadley this week. 8.6K, I think he goes overlooked due to the Borshchevs, Buckleys, Lewises in this area, and people not being historically high on him. You know what? If that's the case, I'm going to want to go out there and play some Jake Hadley. I mean, he scored 104, 109 in his 2 wins inside the UFC, and I think in order to beat Charles Johnson, using that grappling, using that pace, using that pressure, I think this fight is going to be closely contested with a lot of wrestling, a lot of striking. And if that's the case, 5 points per takedown, good cardio and pace from Hadley. I mean, we've seen people land 10 to 12 takedowns on Johnson before. I do think the ceiling is definitely there for Hadley, and he is someone I'm liking this week, as well as a decent floor. I think he's someone to go pretty under-owned, and he is one of my favorite plays in the mid-range to get a bit different. Hopefully look to play into that poor takedown defense of Charles Johnson and get a bit different this week. Have some good leverage. The pick is Hadley, and I will be invested on him on DraftKings. Next up, 8-1 Trey Waters and 9-2 Billy Goff, and this is one of my favorite fights in the entire card. This is going to be a very fun fight because it's a Billy Goff fight. The guy's extremely entertaining. He's the guy who's going to go out there, be a junkyard dog, push that forward pace pressure, and after he's woken up by the first big shot, is relentless. Will continue to go forward, throw with fight-ending intention, absorb a lot of damage in doing so, but fun to watch, able to mix in takedowns. I think he's a very fun fighter. Trey Waters is a bit different. He's a bit more of a technicality specialist, if you want to put it that way. Good range. I mean, 6'5" at 170 pounds is insane. Very, very lanky dude with good range. And he's going to have a 7-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage in this matchup, which will be critical because he is someone who's okay to pick his shots from the outside and land at will, which is something you can do at Billy Goff. So for that reason, I think there's 2 paths. Either Trey Waters is able to pick his shots from the outside, dominate this fight with his range, and win either a late finish or decision that way just due to the damage that Goff absorbs, or Goff's going to make him work. He's going to push forward, throw the fighting in attention, close that distance, be a dog, and really put a pace on Trey Waters. And we've seen Trey Waters hurt before. So if that's the case, I do think a lot of the upside lies here in Billy Goff. I think he's the fun fighter to cheer for in this matchup. I think he's someone who will be entertaining to watch. And I kind of want to cheer for that guy to go forward, be the dog. I think I like putting my money in those guys who are going to go forward and push a pace, look to break their opponents, and I do think in doing so, if he can close the distance, it's his fight to lose. Very aggressive. I love his demeanor. I love his ability to break people down the stretch, same way did Kinoshita, and I will be picking him as an underdog here. Although it's close though, I do not fault anyone for taking Trey Waters. Like I said, if Trey Waters wins this fight, he's going to look dominant because he has that range to be able to pump out from the outside. I just think it's a big Grammy from Goff. DraftKings wise though, it's interesting because although I said the primary path to victory for Waters is pickpocket from the outside, and in doing so only scored 77 last time, Goff can be hit, he can be hurt, and in doing so, this makes it for a very pivotal fight on DraftKings. If Water is able to land that power shot and finish Goff the same way people have attempted to do before, on Dana White Contender Series, he was dropped in the first 10 seconds. It's happened in multiple fights before. If Trey Waters can finish this fight early, the path's there, he could score very well at a sneaky 8.8K. But in return, if he doesn't get that early finish, he is someone who is more so a volume guy who won't get to the optimal without a finish because he doesn't have the grappling and he's reliant on his opponent coming forward. That's why one of my favorite underdogs this week is going to be Billy Goff. A risky play due to the height and reach discrepancy he has, but scored 117 in his first fight in the UFC. Is a guy who will continue to go forward, has great DraftKings metrics because he will push a pace, he will get in his opponent's face, whether that be with wrestling takedown, whether that be with takedowns, volume, power. He's a very aggressive fighter, a junkyard dog, and one that translates well to the DraftKings style of points. So for that reason, I'm going to pick the junkyard dog here in Billy Goff. I'm going to cheer for him to go forward, although I do think it's a pivotal one on DraftKings, but give me the guy 7.4 here. Give me Billy Goff. Next up, we have the 9-2 Tabitha Ricci versus the 13-6 Tisha Pennington. Coming off of a few years off having a kid, that is the big elephant in the room here, and that is going to be a very interesting dynamic behind the spot here. Pennington is someone who is historically a very good UFC fighter, very good volume. She's a tiny tornado, right? Someone who will go forward, throw with a lot of volume, a lot of fighting intention. She's fun to watch because she will be a blistering pace on the feet with volume, pretty good boxing combinations at that, and a pretty hard fighter to hold down, which will be a key point to talk about in this one where Tabitha Ricci is looking to hold you down. Baby Shark here is someone who's going to look to apply the pressure, get her up against cage, take her down, and dominate from top position. She has very good top control. She is someone who has historically utilized that to her success in the UFC, but she's kind of limited to that. Not the same striking at all. I think the volume edge is night and day for Tecia Torres in this matchup, but I do think in saying so, it's a very clear style of striker versus grappler. I don't want to limit it to that because Tecia Torres herself is a pretty good grappler, but I think that's kind of what we're at here. In this spot, gun to my head, I think I'm going to side with a grappler here, Tabitha Ricci. She is someone who is able to establish top position. I do think Tecia Torres, although a great fighter, we have less certainty about her, right? What is she going to look like off of this pregnancy? What is she going to look like coming back after a few years? I think at her prime, she's able to go out there and piece up Tabitha Ricci, but she's going to have to fend off a grapple-heavy approach from Ricci for all 15 minutes, and in doing so, I think it's questionable. I'm not comparing Dern to Ricci, but before this pregnancy, Dern was able to win a decision out there utilizing that grappling, and I do think that Ricci has the opportunity to go out there and put her in situations where she hasn't been in a long time. So I don't think I'll get there in the window on Ricci just because I do think it's a very close fight, and there are a lot of unknowns to the state of this one, but I will be taking Baby Shark in this matchup. On DraftKings, though, it's kind of a pass, and I know Ricci's had ground success before. Scored 122 against Penne, 100 against Oliveira, but a step up in competition, one where there could be a lot of striking exchanges and a lot of question marks behind the grappling success of Ricci. I don't think I'm going to get there too often. I think there are better fights to target on the slate. If I had to pick any, I think they're both cash options because Tecia Torres, historically durable, hard to finish, will throw a lot of volume, whereas Ricci's more reliant on that takedown upside. Really not my favorite fight to target on DraftKings, but I will be picking Tabitha Ricci. And then these next three fights are absolutely electric. Starting off with the 15-6 Terrence McKinney, 12-1 Esteban Ribovics. I'm so excited to see Terrence McKinney live in person. This fight is going to be incredible. He is the trademark for killer to be killed. Has 5 minutes of cardio. If fights were 5 minutes long, he could be a champion because he's extremely dynamic, great striking, great takedowns, and is a very fun fighter to watch because he is truthfully skilled in all areas. The problem he has is poor striking defense and maybe some of the worst cardio in the UFC. Shall he fix that? He could be a problem, but until then, T-Rex is kind of a loose cannon here. He's very dangerous to back because he does fall off after that first round. In this matchup here against a young fighter here in Esteban Ribovics, who is 12-1 but has never been finished. And that's kind of this really weird dynamic we have because Terrence McKinney needs a first round finish to win the fight, but he's facing guys who've never been finished before. Can he do it? That's the question. Because I think when it comes to skill for skill at cardio parity, McKinney's the better fighter. I think he's the better grappler. We've seen Ribovics taken down very easily before, and McKinney tends to thrive in a lower level of competition. But if I know that my bet on McKinney is chalked after 5 minutes, I don't really want to have my faith in him. I'd rather just play round one McKinney props, maybe trust him on DraftKings, and that's maybe what I'm going to do here. Because I do think McKinney's a better fighter. I do think he has the ability to win this fight. I do think he has a grappling path here and power to land as a guy in Ribovics who, although is extremely tough, is able to be hit, is able to be taken down. My question is just, I'm not as certain he can get this fight out of there, so he is more a boomer bust type of play. Because of that, Ribovics, I think, is limited to round 2, round 3 success. His ceiling is kind of capped. I don't think he's going to get a first round finish. I think he really relies on McKinney tiring out and going out there maybe finishing round 2 or 3 the same way Woodson did on Dana White Contender Series. And if that's the case, there's one side I'm targeting this matchup, and that's the underdog here. Although it's risky to trust a guy with 5 minute cardio, on DraftKings, 7.3K Terrence McKinney is the way to go. When he's won fights, he scored 131, 102, 104, 96, and 127. Has all of those wins coming with the very first round, is a very dynamic fighter. And although he has a very low floor, is someone you really want to back in the GPP tournaments. Whereas Ribovics, yes, scored 92 in a third round finish. Yes, scored 92 in a decision win against Kirk. I don't see that same first round finish upside. I think he's someone who is actually limited by Terrence McKinney's styles. Although he's going to fight at a high pace, I don't think he's really going to have much success for that second or third round. And although he still has a style you want to target, because he can go out there and score 80 points, 90 points, 100 points in a win, is he going to score 120 in a first round win? I don't think so. I think he needs to have success when McKinney tires out. So if McKinney goes out there, grapples him in the first round and tires out, and Ribovics lands 20 strikes, a knockdown, and a second round win, is that optimal? I don't necessarily think so. So I'm kind of taking a stand of being risky and going against Ribovics. I think I might actually pick him to win. When it comes to DraftKings, I'd much prefer the Terrence McKinney side of things. It is a very interesting matchup, a fun fight to target as a whole, but one where I'm kind of playing into the early dominance of Terrence McKinney. The more I think about it, I do think this fight 50-50, just whoever can get off on the game plan more. I'm going to trust Terrence McKinney to get that first round finish. I'm going to pick him in this spot. Very dangerous, not with the most conviction. I won't be betting him, but is a very interesting spot here. Give me the upside on a round one Terrence McKinney, but if it gets out of that first round, it's Ribovics all day. And then this is the big one right here. Chase Hooper, 13-3-1. Vyacheslav, Borshchev, 7-3-1. Phenomenal matchup, the most binary striker versus grappler matchup of all time, and one that is just going to be fireworks to go out there and see. Chase Hooper, one of the best BJJ artists we have. Great pace, great historical durability, but great cardio, great grappling. And he's someone who's ever dangerous, only 24 years old, consistently making improvements. He's been fun to watch. Slaviklaus is the striking coach. ATT is a very dangerous striker and one of the most powerful and intelligent strikers we have in this division. I truly think he is one of the best pure technical strikers, and I do think he's dangerous wherever this fight's on the feet. He has very good kicks, very good body shots, ability to read fighters, and is very dangerous. But he can be taken down, and that's the flaw. He's not a well-rounded athlete. He's someone whose ground game not necessarily there. Although he gets back up, can be taken down very easily, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Who gets off in their matchup? Is it the striking of Slaviklaus or the grappling of Hooper? Because of that, I've been going back and forth. I do think it's truly a 50-50 fight, because we've seen Hooper knocked out in the feet. We've seen Borshchev taken down several times before. I do think Hooper's the best grappler Borshchev's fought. If that's the case, I'm actually going to go with the grappler here. Typically, when you guys see me picking fights, especially what I did with that Ricci fight, I tend to go towards my grapplers here, just because it takes one fall, one slip for that guy to land on top position and be dangerous. I'm going to side with Chase Hooper here. A very dangerous pick. He could go out there and be Steve Garcia and brutalize on the feet by the power of Borshchev. I completely acknowledge that, but this fight gets to the mat. We've seen Hooper go out there, be an insanely dangerous grappler. He's going to be the best grappler Borshchev's faced, and I do think he can go out there and have some success. Very fun matchup. I do think it ends inside the distance a large majority of the time, whether it be the striking of Borshchev, the grappling of Hooper. I'm going to side with the grappler here, but very dangerous. DraftKings-wise, though, you kind of want to target this fight. I mean, Borshchev, 134 points against Mahashate, 112 against Bush in his 2 wins in the UFC. We saw Hooper go out there be knocked down 3 times by Steve Garcia, and if that's the case, he has a ton of upside, even as a striker at 8.5K. Flip side of things, Chase Hooper has been DraftKings gold sometimes. In his wins against Fior, 120, 142 against Caceres, 112 against Timur, has a lot of upside. He's going out there and utilizing that grappling, and he's going to have to here. Because of that, 7.7K, extremely high upside. Although the floor is definitely not there at all, he's hard to trust. It's one of my favorite GPP options because he's very, very primed to go out there and score a big score. Should be a fun matchup. I'm going to side with the kid here, the dream in the grappling in this matchup. Give me Chase Hooper. On to the main card now, 11-1 Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus the 5-0 Robelis Despaigne. And this is another really pivotal one on this card because you have the 5-0 Robelis Despaigne, a prodigy, 6'8", longest wingspan in UFC history, a dangerous fighter. Till you watch his tape, it takes you like 3 minutes, right? All of his finish coming early on, except for one, but 4 of his 5 fights ending in like 30 seconds. Is extremely dangerous, bronze medals in Taekwondo, the accolades goes on. And that's why in this matchup here, when he's facing a guy in Waldo Cortes-Acosta, who is a typical decision machine, a guy who's pretty tough, never been finished before, we get a true test of what this prospect is really about. When it comes down to seeing this from a macro perspective for me, it looks like 2 strikers who are going to go out there and compete. It's the power, but the unreliability of someone in Despaigne versus a consistent striker in Waldo Cortes-Acosta who will be in the fight as long as he can. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to side with Robelis Despaigne with a little bit of hesitancy, even to side with him, just because of a couple things. Number one, he's going to be the ace out in this matchup. He's someone the UFC's looking to market. He's on the made card at what, 5-0? Is someone they're looking to push forward as this freak athlete, which he is. but also because they're going to probably engage in a striking affair. And in one that is going to be an early striking affair, although I think the cardio man will be on Waldo Cortes-Acosta's side, as they're fresh, there's no doubt about it, the better striker, in my opinion, is Despaigne. Although Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a good boxer, I've seen good competency from him in the feet before, he's someone who I do think can be hit, someone who I do think will not be as quick to the punch and doesn't have as many weapons. The boxing is there for Waldo. The whole kickboxing is there for Despaigne. The kicks coming up top with that long frame, the power in his hands. And I do think Despaigne does have that death touch. Now, the longer this fight goes, Cortes-Acosta becomes more and more alive. He is someone who has the ability to go out there, draw this out, really test that gas tank, push Despaigne up against a cage, a guy who has not really engaged in MMA that often, making it for a really fun fight. I'm going to side with the bronze medalist here and what is a really fun matchup, but another important one for DraftKings. If Despaigne gets off in his game plan, sort of 127 last time, he is extremely boom or bust because he has no grappling upside. He needs an early finish to hit the optimal lineup, but he is someone who has that power and the ability to win early. Flip side of things, Cortes-Acosta is a guy who I do think has more chances to win this fight than the line entails, but hasn't historically been the best DraftKings scorer. Scored under 50 points in a decision win over 44-year-old Andrei Arlovski? That's not what you want to see. And if that's the case, his ceiling is also limited. In his decision wins, he scores 60 against Vandera, 90 against Sherman, 50 against Arlovski, and those are against 3 questionable level of experience here. So if that's the case, I much prefer the Despaigne side on DraftKings. A lot of upside, a lot of risk, but a guy who I am picking to win this fight should be a good one, a good test to see if this prospect is legit. Moving on, we have the 21-14 Alex Caceres versus the 11-1-1 Sean Woodson, and Woodson follows me again. I saw him live. Well, first of all, I've only been to 4 fight cards in my life. I haven't been to too many, and yet I have seen every single one of Sean Woodson's last 3 fights. I saw him beat Charles Jourdain in Canada. I saw him beat Dance Bazooka in Nashville, and I saw him draw on that Gooden versus Edwards card in Salt Lake City. I've seen his last 3 fights, as well as he's from St. Louis. I saw him in Costco when I first moved down here. I like to say that maybe I am following this guy around. Maybe I have an obsession with Sean Woodson, one of my favorite fighters. Maybe. And that's not necessarily the case. I don't mind him. I think he's a very nice guy. I think he's a great fighter to watch because he's entertaining, he's fun, but he's also on a pretty good win streak that maybe it's because of me. Maybe I'm his good luck charm. But no, truthfully, he gets a very good matchup here on this main card. What Sean Woodson is the sniper. It's his fight nickname. He's 6'2" at 145, incredible frame, incredible boxing accuracy, and he has mixed in takedowns recently. He's looked pretty good, but he has incredible range, a lot of power in the hands as well, but a ton of volume, good cardio. You love to see that from someone with that frame. He actually utilizes it very, very well. Alex Caceres has been in the UFC forever. 21-14, good, solid record there, but also pretty good frame. He himself is a kickboxer, and at that, we're gonna get ourselves a 15-minute kickboxing affair. And in this matchup, gun to my head, I'm gonna pick Sean Woodson. I like his range. I like his ability to dictate the pace, and I do think he'll get more pop from the crowd in this spot here. But this line's off, in my opinion. I think when it comes down to kickboxing affair, Caceres has power. I've seen Woodson hurt more often than I've seen Caceres hurt. And in this spot here, I do think that there's going to be the kicking option for Caceres, whereas Woodson's limited to his hands. If that's the case, although the crowd's going to be behind Woodson, I think Caceres has a very good chance to go out there, land the more damaging shots, potentially win a decision, or even knock out Woodson, a guy's been hurt before. You add in the black belt from Caceres, and we have seen Woodson taken down. I do think Caceres is way more alive than the line entails, and I maybe even will get to a bet on him if the line climbs. But gun to my head, like I said, Woodson was the guy who's going to be dictating the pace, has the ability to utilize his range here, and I do like his boxing volume. More times than not, although I just said Caceres has his paths, I do think Woodson has the ability to go out there, land more volume, win the optics, and win a decision here. DraftKings-wise, this is one that's a tough one for me because Woodson has scored okay, 107 against Bazooka, 122 against Anglin, but truthfully, in his decision wins, 82 against Bosniak, 60 against Alal, 72 against Jourdain, at 9.1K, in what is a primary kickboxing affair against a very durable opponent. I can't get to him that often. I much prefer Despaigne or even a Ribovics or a Rebecki or Ulberg that we'll talk about later than him at 9.1K. Even at that, although I said Caceres is very live to win this spot and I will have some ownership of him, he needs that knockout. In a kickboxing affair, I do think there are more underdogs who win on this card. He scores 77 in a dominant win against Pineda in that spot here. I think he needs that finish, which I think he can get. He's a very dangerous fighter. But if that's the case, he's more a pivot option, more a contrarian play down low 7.1K. And although we'll be rostering him more than Woodson, I think there are better options on this card. Interesting affair. Give me Sean Woodson into my head, although a lot of value in Caceres this week. Then we got the 18-5 Diego Ferreira versus the 19-1 Mateusz Rebecki. Fun fight. Rebecki is an absolute tank, and he's my pick to win. Biggest favorite on the card, and because the guy's been in pretty good form. I haven't been his biggest fan. I think he still has improvements to make. But in this spot here, he's facing a guy, Diego Ferreira, who is getting up there in age. If this fight was a few years ago, I'd maybe favor Diego Ferreira more, but he didn't look the best. He had an insane knockout last time, but he did not look good to start that fight. Has been lost in some wrestling exchanges, and I just struggle to see what Diego Ferreira does better than Rebecki in this spot. Rebecki's the more powerful guy. He's going to be a better striker, better minute winner in my opinion. And although Diego Ferreira is a third-degree black belt or whatever, insanely good on the ground, I think Rebecki's pretty competent there as well and has the physicality to keep it upright shall he decide to do so. All the signs are pointing to Rebecki. I think he's someone who's just at a better spot in his career, prime for success, and I do think he's my pick in this matchup. The question then comes, can he dispose of his opponent the same way he's done to his past three? Because he's averaging 112 on DraftKings right now, scoring 111, 122, and 104 in his 3 wins, making him a phenomenal option. Against an older fighter, Ferreira, who hasn't really absorbed damage that well, being locked out by Gamrot and Gillespie, I'm kind of intrigued with Mateusz Rebecki. I think he's someone at 9.4K who is very risky, but also who has the best chance of winning of anybody this entire slate with good finish upside against an aging fighter, and I will have some Rebecki on this side. To me, Ferreira's limited to I don't want to say a fluke sub because I know he's very dangerous, but I don't see him winning as often. So at 6.8K, he is just a punt play. I think he's someone who's going to need a finish to win this fight, and although he can get it, I think it's a very rare option. I think Rebecki's the play on this slate. If you can afford to get up to him, I prefer him over an Ulberg, Jousset, Woodson. So he's a good pay-up option, but should be a fun fight. I hope Ferreira's got one more fight into him to give him a good award here, but the pick is going to be Rebecki. Let's move on. 3 fights to go. We have the 15-3-1 Alonzo Menifield versus the 9-1 Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg, a good-looking man. Going to see him live there. Guilty. He's a guy who's been fun to watch. A ton of power in his hands. Very skilled fighter who's on a 5-fight win streak, even getting a submission win in his last one against Dong Jung there. Very dangerous fighter. A ton of power in his hands. A primary kickboxer training at Adesanya's camp, and a guy who does have some incredibly powerful hooks. His one loss in the UFC, he was kind of rope and doped, gassed out, and was finished by Kennedy Njoku, but has shown a good ability in his past fights to read situations, land powerful shots, use his physicality to his advantage, and he's going to need to do that against a powerful guy here in Alonzo Menifield. 15-3-1 Alonzo Menifield is just a ball of muscle. He's an absolute freak of nature, a tank, a ton of power in his hands, but he doesn't have that same technicality or striking metrics that Carlos Ulberg has. I think if Alonzo Menifield wants to win this fight, he is someone who has to go out there, make it dirty, potentially mix in some grappling, utilize his size and physicality to close the distance, which is easier said than done. Because of that, the pick is going to be Carlos Ulberg, and I think he's someone I can trust more. However, do I want to play him at -210? Not necessarily. He's still unproven. That fight against Kennedy Njoku looms large, and although I have made some money on him in the past, is someone who I still would like to see some improvements. His grappling is still hit or miss, and although he's a phenomenal striker, how good is his cardio? How good is he at taking damage? We're going to find out here against Alonzo Menifield, who might be a step up. The reason I'm not as bullish on Alonzo Menifield is because he's kind of inconsistent. I mean, he lost to William Knight. He's fought really close to Ed Herman. He's very hit or miss, but has been on a decent streak recently. I mean, beating Jacoby, subbing Crute, those are some pretty good wins recently, and although he looks like he's turning that corner, he's going to get his toughest striker to date here on Carlos Ulberg. Jacoby, I think, is good, but Ulberg, I think, is even more powerful than Jacoby, has the ability to go out there and utilize his physicality to his own right. I just think he's a better mixed martial artist. Menifield is going to need a perfect fight to win here, and although I think he is more live than line and tails, gun to my head, I'm picking Ulberg. I do think in order for Menifield to win, he has to close the distance, and in doing so, Ulberg has a great ability to read the situation, great hooks, good physicality, and although I think the best success for Menifield is to make it dirty, that's easier said than done. DraftKings-wise, this one's puzzling, right? Ulberg, I think he needs an early finish to make the optimal. 3 first-round finishes, scored 105 in all of them. In his one decision win, only scored 70 points, and that's my fear for him here, is if he utilizes a safer approach, looks to strike with Menifield, keep him on the outside, and score 70, he's not optimal at his price tag. And for that reason, he needs an early finish. If you think he can get one, go over there, play him. I like him better than Jousset and Woodson here, but I much prefer going up to Rebecki. I do think Rebecki has a better chance to win and a better ability to finish in this matchup, but I do think Ulberg is definitely a live GPP play. Flip side of things, Menifield is also a punt play because in his wins, he's been able to go out there and score well. Very powerful. I think he's going to need to apply pressure and look to break Ulberg to win this fight, which makes him very intriguing on DraftKings. Fun fight. I'm picking Ulberg, but maybe the line's a little wide. Co-main event time, 18-6, Joaquin Buckley, 34, 8-2, Nurliton Ruziboev. That record is just still incredible to me. Only 30 years old, pretty good experience, but also cutting down to 170, the 6'5" Nurliton Ruziboev. Let's see how he looks in the scales. That's a big asterisk I'm putting on this fight. How does he look in the scales? Because this is going to be a very interesting one to see how they size up. 5'10" Joaquin Buckley has struggled with taller fighters, but I do think he's the more proven guy in this spot. And that's going to be my pick here. I'm picking the St. Louis guy, the guy I saw at Panda Express. I like me some Joaquin Buckley. But I do think it's going to be a very tough fight. Buckley has been knocked out before, and I do think the path to victory for Ruziboev is finding that chin. With his size, his power, that first round success, that opportunity is definitely there. But the guy I think is better at winning minutes. The guy I think is a more dangerous wrestler from top position. The guy who's more proven to me is going to be a giant joke in Buckley. I never thought I'd say that, but he has good heart. He wants to win in front of his home crowd. He did whatever it took to get on this card. And I do think his volume, his top control, and his ability to be a good fighter at this division is something I've seen more often than Ruziboev. Ruziboev is dangerous, but still not a guy who I've seen proven. I mean, knocking out Bruno Ferreira and eye poking his Ricci doesn't tell me much. Getting Kimura's off his back doesn't tell me much. I do think Buckley's an easier fighter to quantify and an easier fighter to trust, so I'll be taking him in this matchup. DraftKings-wise, though, this is one of the fights to target, because if Ruziboev wins, in my opinion, it's going to be a first-round knockout, and it's going to be optimal at 7.5K. There's no way about it. I don't think Ruziboev has the best minute winning, but he's dangerous. He's powerful, he's big, and I think he can knock out Buckley, which is why at 7.5K, Ruziboev is a phenomenal DraftKings target this week. However, if I'm not picking him to win and I'm picking Buckley, I think Buckley also has some equity here. 8.7K, hungry to go out there and do well in front of his home crowd. Has power, the ability to work in that third round, the ability to mix in takedowns as well, in my opinion. He's also a good option. Great fight to target on DraftKings. I'm picking Buckley, but Ruziboev is very, very dangerous. And then on to the main event, the 27-12 Derek Lewis versus the 11-1 Rodrigo Nascimento. My number one rule that I've always said on this channel, you never bet against Derek Lewis, and he showed that last time. Why? Very exciting fighter to watch. Maybe not the best main event fighter, but a big name. And let's make one thing clear here, is Rodrigo Nascimento is not the main event this week. It's Derek Lewis. The card is kind of not built around him, but he is the reason we're in a main event. If this fight was one that they're trying to promote Rodrigo Nascimento, he wouldn't be the main event here. He's not a star. He doesn't really looking to go out there. They're looking to potentially throw in another highlight reel knockout for a guy in Derek Lewis, who is one of the most popular UFC fighters, who took off his pants last time and is a household name. And I do think of putting him in the main event, even at 39 years of age, is looking to go out there and sell tickets using Derek Lewis's name. If that's the case, if Rodrigo Nascimento is the same guy to be knocked out by Cortes-Acosta, I'm picking Derek Lewis to go out there and knock him out. Yes, on paper, Nascimento has the grappling edge. He could go out there and tire out Derek Lewis, but I'm not really impressed by his wins. Hurt by Mays, split decision against Latifi, Tanner Boser he had to hold down. I do think he has his biggest test to date, no pun intended, against an extremely powerful guy in Derek Lewis who could just get up, who can land that one shot, and the same way that Doc was able to knock him out early, I think Lewis can too. A ton of power in his hands, of course, we all know this. I don't really need to break down a Derek Lewis fight. I'm picking him one last time. It could hurt me here, and because it's a Derek Lewis fight, I do want to target on DraftKings, but I do think he's the A side of this matchup. He is the side I think they're looking to promote here, and he's going to be my pick to win. Give me the power of Derek Lewis by KO, and because of that, on DraftKings, 8.4K, another good target. Scored 133 against Rogerio Lima last time, 105 against Dawkins in that win, 108 against Oleinik. When he wins, it's by first round knockout. He has a ton of power. Whereas Nascimento, I think, is live to win as well. In his wins, he's able to go there, utilize grappling. He has 5 rounds to work. Almeida couldn't finish Lewis, so who says Nascimento can? I don't really buy into that. I do think Nascimento, if he wins, has grappling and finish upside. I just don't think it happens all too often. I think the A side here is Lewis. I think more often than not, he gets an early knockout, and because of it, I will have more ownership of Lewis. However, he will be more popular, so if you want some leverage, Nascimento is a good way to go. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Let me quickly run you through my quick picks. There are a ton of closely lined fights, so these are my gun-to-head picks. Maybe the line might be wide, but I am picking Derek Lewis, Joaquin Buckley, Carlos Ulberg, Mateus Rebecki, Sean Woodson, Robelis Despaigne, Chase Hooper, Terrence McKinney, Tabitha Ricci, Billy Goff, Jake Hadley, Kevin Jousset, and JJ Aldrich. Very competitive lines there. It should be a very, very fun card, and I'm hoping it is. DraftKings-wise, a ton of fights we got to look into. First of all, most notably, we have to see if Despaigne get that early finish. Very good KO upside. I think that Waters-Goff fight is extremely fun, an extremely good fight to target. Ribovics McKinney, any McKinney fight you want to target, and I do think he's a very good underdog. And then that Borshchev-Hooper fight. I mean, the grappling of Hooper, the power of Borshchev, I think the winner is going to be the optimal lineup. Because of that, let's break it down. Up top, I like Rebecki the most, and Despaigne has some GPP upside as well. In the mid-range, I like Joaquin Buckley. I think Jake Hadley is my favorite pivot option in this mid-range due to potential grappling upside. And then Derek Lewis is going to be in a lot of my lineups at 8.4K. As underdogs, Chase Hooper, 7.7, Ruziboev, 7.5, Billy Goff, 7.4K, Terrence McKinney. Those 4 underdogs, although they are risky fighters and they could very well get finished in that first round, have the highest ceilings on the slate in my opinion. These underdogs really can go out here barking this week. I wouldn't be surprised if there is salary left on the table. And then punt options are Menifield and Ferreira. Reignmakers wise, highest ceilings. I just mentioned those underdogs. So if you want to go out there and target them, they are going to have good ceilings. They just come with more risk. The safer guys with the same upside, in my opinion, Rebecki, Ulberg, Hadley, Lewis, Despaigne. Betting wise, I haven't locked in much yet. I probably will be betting Jake Hadley, probably the under in the Waters Goff fight. Maybe I'll even get into JJ Aldrich bet, but be sure to check out my Twitter at GamblesGordo on Friday to see what I end up with, and my best bets video sponsored by CoolBet out later this week. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. I wish everyone the best of luck in all your betting and DraftKings endeavors this weekend. Let's make some money, guys.